It's all screwed up out there, man, but you don't need me to tell you that. You already know.
Welcome to Deep Americana.
Hello, I'm Ray Carney. Today I'll be interviewing Désirée about a little bit of life in the sex acts work industry. Désirée, so tell me about your life.
Well, I'm Désirée.
Okay.
I'm 21. I'm a Capricorn.
Cool.
And I work as a dominatrix as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
What is that like? How did you, hold on, let's reverse. How did you come to that, if you don't mind talking about it?
So I first got into sex work. I was 18. I just moved to Denver from this tiny island. And I was sitting at Cheeseman Park smoking a blunt. And this guy comes up to me. And we started talking. And he tells me that he owns this company cleaning houses and lingerie.
Okay.
And if I was interested.
Right.
So I said yes and went ahead and did that for a little while, cleaning houses and lingerie. And that guy was also running an escort business on the side.
Right.
And he went to jail or prison, something like that.
Right.
And so I was out of a job then. And at the same time that I was doing that, I was actually teaching preschool as well. So... And then I found a group on Craigslist. There was an ad before they banned everything.
Right.
It was right on the cusp of that before they banned all that.
Right.
It was an ad for hot girls that smoke weed, something like that, very vague.
Right.
So I went and I met with these people, this man and his wife, and they told me how they ran this company doing massages and lingerie. So I thought, okay, well, that's great. And there was no happy endings involved in that, you know?
Right.
So I thought it was all good. And that is probably all I should say about that.
Okay.
And then through that job, when that all fell through, a couple of the other girls that were working with me told me about how they were starting this dominatrix company and that
Right.
it was totally legal, have
Right.
their business license and whatnot. And it's here in Denver.
Cool.
The name is Rocky Mountain Relaxation and Domination,
Cool.
RMRD.
So, so is that experience empowering to you?
Yeah.
I mean, how has that changed your life? Because you were in a profession that was
Yes.
quite the opposite.
Absolutely.
You know, you got to think about it in the 1920s or 40s, somewhere in there. The rules for a teacher
Yes.
were to be female,
Mm-hmm.
to not only be female, but not be seen out in public with another male,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just crazy stuff.
To be very
yeah,
desexualized.
which is terrible.
It is, because obviously those people are human beings.
You're not allowed to live your fucking life.
Exactly, yeah. And I just, I remember even when I taught preschool that the director came to me and she's like, you have to start dressing more appropriately, you know, we've had some
Right.
complaints from the dads, or probably their wives.
Right.
But, yeah, this has been very empowering for me. I loved teaching preschool, and
Right.
it'd be cool to do something like that again with kids.
Right.
But this experience is not only financially beneficial for me, you know, I can make my rent in a day.
Right.
It's very,
It's probably more money than you would make teaching.
and that's all. Well, that's also the problem, is that with teaching, I was making $13 an hour. I was not able to survive and pay my bills and
Right.
do my thing.
Which is a travesty in itself, because teachers should make way more.
Oh,
right?
yes, especially preschool teachers, I think, because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the building blocks of who you will be.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. That's the building blocks of our fucking society, and we don't
Exactly.
want
That's why we need.
We don't want to,
Yes.
we don't want to.
And that's what drives people who are really good at it, like me, and who love it, like
Mhm.
like myself, to work that, to other work where they can make money. Because while I loved it, I couldn't pay my bills, and I was working my ass off, you
Right.
know? So that was the struggle there. So, but as far as like for my mental, like for my self-confidence and stuff,
Yeah.
it's very beneficial for me to like see, I guess, how other people perceive me,
Right.
maybe. Yeah.
What do you mean?
I don't know, when they like I guess I present myself as like when I'm in there with the client, I can like be whoever I want to be.
Right.
And so I choose to be myself, but like the best version of myself, like
Right.
very confident. And then I just see that like I can bring that into my everyday life as well. You know? And it's, I don't know, like in the beginning, I think it definitely jaded my view of men because
it's torn down to like this, hey, do this.
yes,
Right.
and that's especially in the beginning because I wasn't educated about how to handle these
Right.
situations being in sex work.
Right. I bet.
Yeah,
I bet there's a lot to know within that.
there is, and there's a lot I've learned, and like a lot that I could help people with for sure. I've thought about that, like starting a blog or something to
You
help
should.
people. Yeah, because
You should.
there's a lot of stuff that I wish that I would have known, and that I think would have kept me. And I've heard, you hear stories about people like these terrible things happening to sex workers and stuff, and like I've never had an experience like that, but
I think like, yeah, I don't hear a lot of bad experiences, and there's industries like in Las Vegas where it's legit there, and there's insurance for people and things of that nature that, I imagine just like in a factory, you might hurt your hand. It's kind of a bad way to say that, but something bad may happen. But it seems like for the most part, they have, it's a thing for someone to be able to do, make money and enjoy yourself. And I think, like you're saying, it might be able to be therapeutic, right?
I think it is therapeutic, like not just for me and like my own mental, but for the clients and for the people that come to see me. Like these are people that maybe don't have intimacy in their own lives, in their personal lives, or don't know how to be intimate with a woman, or maybe they work too much, things like that. So I'm able to like provide them with that companionship and that like, yeah, I don't know how I would explain that.
Companionship.
Yeah.
Like,
especially with doming. Like,
so do you end up like spanking people or like all sorts of shit? That's
I've done
amazing.
some crazy things. Yeah. There's ball busting is a really big fetish.
Oh
they want you to wear your most pointy heels and kick them as hard as you can. Some people are really into that. There's like humiliation.
Right.
That one, I think that's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun for me. Like, yeah. But it does get pretty weird. People are into some
I can imagine
some things. Yeah, but I don't judge, because I'm like, and I like to provide people with that safe space to explore that sexual side of them that isn't necessarily like nurtured in our society.
Right.
So, yeah. I feel like there was more I wanted to say about that. Or helping other people.
Okay.
When it comes to doming, like, so these people that have these fetishes, like getting kicked in the balls, these people are obviously, they've been through something that, not always, but they've seen something triggered that in them, and like, so I have the opportunity to like nurture that, instead of maybe make them feel ashamed or embarrassed or weird about it. Like, I'm like, the weirder the better. Like,
you're provides an outlet for something that a lot of people don't necessarily have, which is probably a lot more helpful. I would think.
I think it is. Like, my clients they mostly always leave happy. Like, you always have the few outliers, I guess you would say, but as a general whole, I'd say everyone leaves very happy, and yeah, it's a crazy world out there. I like to
Yeah, man, I know
give
myself.
people-
I'm pretty, crazy, and just thinking about what I look at. You know what I mean? And
Like
to
what? What do you mean?
just in reality, like everybody everywhere,
Yeah.
right? What they're looking at is probably batshit crazy, but I think you do need to kind of be able to feel your way through things.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
Definitely. Especially, yeah, like with sexual things,
Yeah.
because there's really not an outlet for that, and
No, not
our culture just has such like I guess
a taboo thought about a woman's body.
yes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I mean that is so true. Yeah.
Well, yeah, think about that. Like it's pretty crazy when you look at that idea. Like from the outside, it looks like you put a woman on a pedestal, but what's really happened is you said you can't do this or this.
Exactly.
But we can.
Exactly.
And it's what perpetuates our fascination with shit that's taboo is having things taboo, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but
Exactly.
it is, and it's just you can look at like our drug problems in this country,
Mm-hmm.
and that is all fucking taboo. And most of all of this stuff we're talking about is oppressive bullshit that
Yeah.
shouldn't be there, and that's something that why I do this or I make art and things of that nature is because we need to strive to push past that. Yeah. You know.
To push past that.
Yeah,
You can put me
we
on
were talking earlier, right?
Mhm.
And you said you had suffered probably some abuse, right? How have you dealt with that to be able to? Because I've suffered abuse myself, and there's days you don't want to fucking breathe,
Yes.
right? And so to get through that, what did you do to get through that?
Well, I guess the abuse that happened to me was when I was really young, like 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any memory of it, and
Right.
that's a trauma response. Your brain
Right.
protecting you from this like overload of
Right, emotion and
Yes.
stress. And,
exactly, and so I have no memory of what actually happened to me, but I do remember telling my mom when I was a kid. I remember like we were sitting in my grandmother's driveway in the car. And I just remember that I had like been wanting to tell her for so long, it was like bubbling up inside of me, and I just like leaned over the seat and I told my mom, I know what sex is, and I did it with so and so.
Oh wow!
And my mom like turned around and she was like, "What?"
Right, yeah.
And yeah, she didn't, in my opinion, really know how to handle that situation of me coming to her with this information. Like, I do know that I never saw that person again.
Right.
I don't know what happened. it was kind of like we don't need to talk about that kind of thing.
Right.
So I think that was definitely damaging because it just like created this idea, I guess, in my head that like I should feel ashamed about it, that I should feel guilty about it.
Right.
I went through like in my early adolescence, like feeling very guilty about sex, about wanting to have sex, about having sex, just like this inner guilt. And with that's gone away with time and effort of just like when I get that feeling, I just kind of remind myself that like I'm okay, like I'm safe, this is a safe feeling to have, like this is a good feeling to have.
Right.
And like I'm with someone that's making me feel safe, like so just kind of
Which can be really hard to do at times, I imagine, because that shit is very. I mean, that's.
Yeah,
when I was younger, I was raped to the point that I had surgery, right? And so, anyways,
that is extremely traumatic.
Yeah, it's no good.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so you can sympathize and understand.
Completely. And then like your view on sex coming into that is completely fucking skewed.
And were you young when it happened?
Yeah, I don't remember it.
Yes. See, and it's like
it was traumatic.
It's like I think that when it happens when you're young, it's you form your whole idea of sex not basically off that experience.
Depending on how young you are,
because the thing that I've learned when I used to teach preschool, right? Can I actually have one of those?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. When I used to teach preschool, I took this course about preventing childhood sexual assault.
Okay.
And it was like so eye-opening to me because I had never talked about what happened to me before.
Yeah.
Before that time that I spoke to my mom, you know?
Right.
I had never so here I am as an adult hearing these things about, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this explains so much.
Right.
And like,
Right. It like clicks. You're like, holy shit.
And it was all about the main thing something that I gathered from it, I guess, would be that when it comes to like assaulting children, it's not a matter of like forcing them. It's a matter of convincing them that it's play, you know, that it's okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that was my case specifically, and that's like I think that's really damaging because I mean I went through phases, you know, in high school and
well, no, yeah, especially at those ages, like you generally aren't gonna you're gonna think about it a bit, but you're not gonna be so deep into it that you know, like you're gonna have, you know, I had memories that at a very young age that fuck with you because you're like looking at a person and being able to envision that person, like your imagination's going that far because it's been pushed that far. If that makes any sense.
So true. And it makes so much
sense.
And
it does like give you that feeling. For me,
I was always hypersexual.
Right.
Even as a child. And it's, you know, probably a product of that abuse, you know.
Right.
I think that I probably somewhere along the line equated sex with acceptance.
Right.
And so, especially when I was in high school, and I kind of like took that, like my self-esteem was solely based on other people's image of me and like how, like, oh, that person doesn't want me, like I can make them want me.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, and that's just not a healthy view to have of love and of sex.
No, that's I think that's one of the worst things, especially for that to happen to a fucking child, is that child should be able to hang on to that fucking innocence as long as they can, because that's going to be gone once you appear in the real world and have to pay a bill or do something.
Exactly.
You know. So what did you do that helped you get through that?
Well, I'm still working on it.
Right.
I'm in therapy.
Okay.
And my therapist wants me to do this thing where I'm going to like basically have to sit in that trauma, like go back to that place in my mind and sit there and kind of work it out. And then we're going to put it in a literal box because I'm going to write it all out. I'm a writer, so I'm going to write it all out and then put it in a literal box and bury it there at my therapy. And I don't know like how that will feel, but I'm very like symbolic person, I guess.
Right.
So I think that will help. But for me, I've never gone back into that headspace. Every time that I do now, I have to bring myself out because, you know, you don't want to sit in that.
Well, right.
In an unsafe environment.
I've had occasions where I've had anxiety so bad that I've had a fucking seizure. This has happened a few times in my life. So like that headspace can be extremely dangerous, but it is something that we have to work through. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing to do,
yeah.
I think.
Anxiety is a bitch, and that's what I live with daily. I have an anxiety disorder. And I think that pretty much most of my mental problems are like a product of not just that trauma, but I think that
the trauma being ignored.
That too, and I think that I think that when we are exposed to trauma at a young age, things that may not traumatize someone else become very traumatizing to us. Because we're oversensitized now. Like
that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense with that. Yeah. Yeah, overreactions to different
I've always
things. I've
thought
had that
I
as
was,
well.
you know, like weird. And I remember my mom always being like, you're a basket case. Like you cannot keep your emotions together at all.
Which is not helpful.
Absolutely not. But but it's,
it is.
And that's another thing is that my parents didn't know how to handle the mental aspects of me. Because
I was going to say, who does? You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, unless you have experienced it yourself.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a whole, like we don't even understand it completely in our sciences. Yeah, well, and our science to it. It's just, it's like, it's hard. I for a long time really resented like different people, you know, from different experiences. And slowly, within this past year or two, I've been able to forgive different things and look at it and be like, you know, how would you even understand, instead of, because I was pretty judgmental, about like, fuck you, you know, you were around when these things happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, and
It's hard
I
not
think
to hang on to that.
I was really taught that, like, I was never allowed to express anger. Anger
Right.
was, like, shunned in my house, I
Oh,
guess
wow.
you could say. So
Okay.
I never really learned how to handle, like, confrontation or
Right.
anything like that in a healthy manner. So even my roommate, she comes in screaming and stuff, and I am instantly anxious. I'm shaking. I'm having a hard time breathing. I can't
Right.
think straight. I'm sweating, like,
Right.
and it's just, and I'm like, and I beat myself up because I'm like, why am I like this? Why can
Right.
everyone else handle something like this, but I completely break down?
Right.
And then I have to, like, be very kind to myself in those times, you know, and
Yeah,
be
you
like,
do. You have to
know?
reassure yourself.
Exactly, and that's the
hard.
biggest thing
It's
because
hard.
because I used to be so mean to myself. I had such
Yeah.
a negative narrative going on in my head about everything, but mostly about myself and
Right.
about the way I looked and the way everything, you know?
Yeah.
And so positive self-talk has been really important. And we were talking earlier about, like, when you're tripping.
Uh-huh.
And I noticed that, like, when I'm tripping, I hear that positive talk so much more. Like, I feel like I instill it when I'm not tripping. And
Right.
then when I am, it comes through to my unconscious. Like, I might be sitting there like, oh shit, okay, I'm tripping too hard right now. And then I hear it in my head,
Yeah.
like, I'm okay. I'm
Right.
safe,
Right.
and I'm
Right.
okay.
That is a hell of a tool for that, actually.
Yeah.
Because
That
you
positive self-talk.
Yeah, you can definitely reassure and stuff. Very
You can
well.
pause it.
Let me see. We've got a solid 20 minutes, which is good.
That is good. And we should do more.
We
should.
can. We can. Well, the thing to do would be like listen to this and like touch on other subjects as well. That's the other thing, is that stuff is like open. I made podcasts for a while. I'm not some super famous podcast
Yeah.
guy, but like, yeah, man, that shit it's easy to do.
Yeah.
Let me turn this off so my editor doesn't hear me downplaying how easy it is. He's pretty cool. He's someone I've known for a long time. Well, it's cool to talk to you. Talking about this shit, you don't meet people who really talk.
I do.
I do some. Well, right.
See, I connect with, and I think that may be like a trauma thing too.
Uh-huh.
It's like my ability to connect with people so easily, like from
Yeah.
the homeless guy on the street
Right.
to, like, you know, the big
I
baller
can, but
that
I
comes
get
in.
like I'll have, you know, people try to empathize, sympathize, and it'll be just bullshit, and I can't. I'm just like I
And I
can't
see
deal
through the
with
bullshit.
you.
So
Can't deal with it.
there
you
are
know?
people like that you can't always get through.
Yeah.
Of course, and you just gotta kind of like, yeah, okay. I can't engage. Like,
Right.
when I'm in that state, like, I remember one time she came in, my roommate is very crazy, but she comes in screaming, throwing shit, yelling, and, like, I was in my room and she didn't even know I was in there, and I, like, it was like I wasn't even in my body. Like, my body was just packing a bag.
Right.
I opened the door and I left. Like, and then I got outside and I was like, holy fuck, like, how did I
Right.
get out here right now? Like, my instinct is always to just go. And that actually happened to me, like, first time I tried to get sober. I fucking I was, like, sober for 3 days, and I
Uh-huh.
was feeling very, very anxious right
Right,
before
right.
a concert.
Okay.
And I saw this shooter, like, on my friend's nightstand, and without even thinking, I just grabbed it and
Right.
chugged it. And then I, like, looked at it and I was like, holy fuck, like, this alcohol thing, like, may be pretty bad.
It can get you, man. I did.
It got me.
Tons of probably 150 milligrams of Oxycontin a day for about a decade, and made good money off art and shit like that. But at some points, like, addiction finally and you can stay ahead of it for a long time, but it's like once you hit it, it's hard to get away from it.
Did you
for me.
feel that point, like have that moment or that feeling where you're like, I know if I keep doing this, it's gonna be a problem because I like it that much?
I did, and I'll tell you when I had that point is when I think I had like a ton of Dilaudid, 4 milligram Dilaudid, and like I'm in a grow house,
Okay.
running the shit, and boy, it would think it was 4 a.m. And if you know what Dilaudid is, snorting any of that. You know, the 4 is one of the highest milligrams you can get, and like to do one, it'll slow you down.
Yeah.
Immensely.
I've never done
went
it.
through 6 in like 5 hours, and so I was slurring talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, "You guys got to come out and like hang out with me, because you know I'm fucked up."
I've been there on ketamine.
Yeah, well, but that's a little safer.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, it is.
I think,
safer.
yeah, absolutely. You could die off that shit. I'm
Yeah,
sure you
you
could die
can.
off ketamine if you did
You can,
quite enough.
but it is completely. You got to be careful with that stuff. That's why I take kratom.
Yeah.
Because it helped me basically. I haven't had opioids for about a year.
Yeah, kratom does really help with opioid addiction, I've heard. And when I first got sober,
Well, did you know alcohol, if you drink long enough, consecutively enough, alcohol metabolizes in your blood system just like heroin. And so a lot of a lot of the same similarities.
yeah, and I can definitely, because I drank for every day for about maybe 2 years, just from when I came here, and that's not even a long time in the grand scheme of things, but it was hard on my body. I remember I was throwing up bile every day. I would shake if I didn't have a drink, because I was drinking a lot, and I was
Right.
drinking whiskey.
Right.
And you know, when I stopped, so I went to jail. I got a DUI
Right.
from
Happens.
yeah, I was drank a bottle of Jameson, and I was on like half a gram of cocaine, half a gram of ketamine, and went to go buy my new car. And my ride ditched me, and I was just feeling like a fuck it kind of attitude. At that point, I didn't really care if I lived or died.
Right.
So I took 4 Xanax bars and got behind the wheel.
Jesus.
And I remember holding the steering wheel and talking to myself like, I'm okay, we can do this. And then cut the tape, don't remember anything.
Right.
I remember waking up in jail
Yeah.
and in solitary,
Oh boy.
knocking on the door, and I'm like, what happened? Can I get some water? And the guard's like, you seem completely different right now.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I'm coherent, so I have no idea what just happened. And
One time when I was younger, the first time I took a Xanax bar, I almost enlisted in the fucking military. I went in and took their test.
Oh my
And
God.
they're like, okay, you know, they're like, we'll get you signed. I was like, no, I am too fucked up to be signing this shit, you know, just ridiculous shit.
Dude, that is crazy.
Well, yeah, well, it's crazy what you're telling me there. It's I think a lot of us that have deep-rooted mental things like PTSD and stuff like that is you're probably gonna go a little harder than most people, because you're reaching for something you don't know what it is.
And that's true, and that's something I've learned in therapy, is that, you know, I was taking all these drugs and I was drinking all the time because I'm missing that in my brain. The chemical, like, composition of my brain is missing that something that I'm seeking out. Whereas, like, people that go for, like, cocaine and crack, maybe, like, you know, could be okay on prescribed Adderall, like,
Right.
you know,
If used correctly.
and, you know, but, and I don't know what the fuck I need, but
Well, that's my thing. Like, hallucinogens work really well in these situations.
That's so true.
Because you can't do it. You can do it daily, but you got to take 300 times the amount to do that. And so to be able to have something to look forward to that is that eye-opening, right? It can displace that addictive attitude, I feel like.
Say the last part again?
It can displace. It can.
What
it
can?
The hallucinogens.
The hallucinogens, okay.
Right. Well, you can do that daily, right? But after a while, you're going to run out of different types of it and things of that nature. So you have to have a break,
Yeah.
right, for it to work. And I think that has helped me on my pursuit of all this
Do
stuff.
you
as well.
microdose or do you trip?
No, I trip.
See, I started microdosing with acid, and it's hard to microdose with acid if you don't dose it yourself, you know? So I was just
Right.
like cutting up tabs, like I'll take this little bit today, this little bit
It's
today.
way better to have liquid, yeah.
Yeah, and then I started microdosing with shrooms, and
Uh-huh.
I would just buy like an ounce of shrooms, grind them up in a grinder, and capsule them myself so that it's the same amount that I'm taking every time. And yeah, that was so beneficial. And I think my problem is whenever I get better, I stop forgetting what helped me get better,
Oh yeah.
like therapy, like being
Yep.
sober, like
Yep.
microdosing, and then I stop. But it was so beneficial, microdosing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for my mental, for just like you feel ready for the day, like I could get anything done.
And I
That's great.
I do know people that do microdose versus not tripping,
Yes.
and it works well for them. It's just
For me,
it's like I'm working on something like that image I was
Yeah.
showing you earlier, and I'm getting to a point within 2 or 3 days that I don't like that, and so using that, you can break through a lot of shit. Just like with this trauma, is I think if we were to go and sit in our trauma while we were tripping, it's not going to completely heal it and make it go away, but I think
I
it'll
think
be
it would
more.
help so much.
Yeah.
I've done guided meditations. There's this one that I found. I may have saved it, but it was about like approaching your inner child, like
Okay.
the. And so I did that, and like it was just a very. I wish I could remember everything, but I just remember like seeing my little child self like in a field, completely happy, and like that was me before
Right.
everything had happened. And yeah, I don't know. Sitting in that trauma, yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
So,
Damn.
like, what do you do to relax?
What do I do to relax? I guess I try to meditate. I try to center myself. I
Good.
try to ground myself whenever I feel any intense emotion.
How do you do that? How do you meditate?
I close my eyes and I focus on just my breathing. Like I think of my lungs as like balloons,
Right.
and I'll imagine them filling up and closing, filling up and closing. And then if you do that after a while, I hit this point of like where I feel like my whole entire sight kind of like centers.
Okay.
Because I feel like there's this constant like static electricity going on
Right.
in my brain, and when I meditate I feel that like alleviate. I feel that settle and go away.
You know, the likelihood is that there is like static electricity because there is
very
within
true.
your body.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh man.
Yeah, my ride is.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a good night.
Thank you. It was so great to meet you.
Yeah,
And
it was
I
good.
want
It
to
was
do
good
this
to
more.
meet you. This concludes our interview with Désirée.